Welcome to the fourth quarter, your front row seat to the business behind sports, where we unpack the deals, power moves, and trends shaping this industry. We're here in New York City, the epicenter of sports and entertainment.
Sorry, LA.
Siraj, how are you feeling today, brother?
I'm feeling great. Honestly, this week has been jam-packed with a bunch of business moves in sports. A lot of things I wanted to cover if it was a Monday, but we're doing this weekly, and we got a lot of stuff to talk about.
And we're ending it this week on a nice show together, so I'm excited, man. We have a stacked docket, major deal news that we're going to cover. Headline here is that Magic Johnson is now involved in a potential bid for a expansion franchise for the NBA in Las Vegas.
Yeah, Showtime could be in Vegas instead of
Showtime
LA
Vegas
now.
Didn't think it'd get more entertainment than Los Angeles, but might be a potential thing in Vegas that we're going to explore and break down. A few fund launches that we were going to get through. New private equity firms coming in. Surprise, surprise. It seems like there's a new announcement every week. We'll touch on that. Of course, wouldn't be a complete show if we didn't talk about college sports. We have President Trump, who had the Save College Sports Roundtable at the White House with a bunch of leaders across the table there. NBA Commissioner Adam Silver, college football GOAT Nick Saban, and a few others that were there.
And Trump's got a lot on his docket, but the fact that he's carving out some time to talk about college sports is a good sign for the sports industry.
Well, and we'll also cover what came out from it, right?
Of course.
There's a couple things that are interesting, some things that are stalling. We'll see what that means for the college sports landscape. Of course, major geopolitical things that are happening. This is not a political show, but it has impacted sports with a diversion in schedule for F1 and Fanatics for scheduled events there, and we'll break that down. I think this is some of the coolest partnership news that we've ever covered.
Yeah.
The two most infamous companies in tech both start with the letter P, and they both partner together.
Yeah, Polymarket and Palantir.
We'll see how that one's going down, but it seems like a pretty cool partnership on the tech side and insider trading and catching suspicious activity on prediction markets, and more on that soon. And then, of course, we'll have to talk about kind of the thing that's happening. Legendary agency Wasserman is rebranding to The Team.
The team, yeah.
I'm holding back my honest thoughts on that name right now.
Very, very simplistic name. You know, sometimes simple names do work, but I do got some thoughts on this, so can't wait to share them.
Okay, cool. So without further ado, let's jump in and talk about this deal news that's happening. I want to start with Magic Johnson. He met with Nevada leaders, specifically the governor of Nevada, Joe Lombardo, and other civic leaders in Southern Nevada on what it would look like to bring a potential NBA expansion franchise to Las Vegas. He ain't my GOAT, but he might be my GOAT off the court. So he's one of this Hall of Famer, obviously, is one of the best businessmen. He owns a stake in the LA Dodgers, the Washington Commanders, MLS's Los Angeles FC, the NWSL's Washington Spirit, and the LA Sparks WNBA team, just to name a few.
And those are all minority stakes. What's very interesting about this is that he wants a controlling position in a potential Vegas franchise. And I think that might be the next step for him, where he truly owns a team.
Yeah, and there's a lot of interesting things that are talked about. So it's not just the franchise that's potentially coming to Vegas. These series of meetings actually happened a month ago, so it's interesting to see that it hit the news recently. Wonder when they decided to seed that to the media, but it's also along the potential arena and hotel projects. So there's a real estate piece to this as well, and of course we know how hot real estate and sports have been together.
Oh yeah, 100%. I feel like there's a new real estate project every single day when it comes to, obviously you have the Commanders, now you have the Atlanta Hawks with the Gulch, with the Centennial Yards project.
Yep.
I feel like it makes sense that if you get a franchise in Vegas, the first thing that you need to do is build as much real estate as you can around that entertainment experience.
Yeah, so the way they're positioning this right now, I believe the current stadium where their NHL team plays is called
the Golden Knights.
Yeah, right. It's called is T-Mobile Arena. But what they're asking for is they want a new kind of development on the northern part of the Strip. So that will include multi-use real estate, making an entertainment district. But this group that Magic put together is called the MAGI, M-A-G-I expansion group. Which includes Las Vegas businessman Mike Bellin, and sports and entertainment vet Andre Cleveland. So I've tried to look into these two guys. Mike Bellin, I think, has a background. There's not too much on him publicly, but I think he has a background in construction. And Andre Cleveland, funny enough, is a producer, or was a producer, for Magic's docuseries or documentary that happened in 2022, I believe. So they've been close together for a minute.
Okay, that's awesome. It's awesome. Yeah, I think there's a lot of different moves that they can make here. It really comes down to convincing the NBA that Vegas is the right spot. So, quick update on what's been going on with the expansion decision that the NBA has to make. So, Commissioner Adam Silver, he wanted to have a talk with the Board of Governors this March, actually, to discuss what it means to expand
in New York City, right?
I believe so, yes. And they're still deciding on what teams that they want to expand into or what cities they want to expand into. There's been a lot of discussion on whether it should be expansion or relocation, right? There's a lot of franchises that people are calling out, specifically the Grizzlies and Pelicans, where they're like, hey, like, why don't we move those teams to a much more, I would say, not exciting, but more lucrative cities, right? You have obviously Vegas. Sure. You know, there's been talks of like Mexico City, London. My favorite city that I think it should go to is Seattle, but we can talk about that soon because I got a lot of takes on that.
I disagree with you, by the way, but yeah, we should talk about it.
But expansion fees are expected to be around $4 to $7 billion, so 4 to 5. But just because of all the recent transactions that have happened in the NBA, obviously with the Celtics selling for $6 billion and the Lakers selling for $10 billion, it's going to be a very expensive, expensive franchise. And it depends on who actually has the money in the pockets to do it, right? And especially what city that they want to go to.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think, though, for an NBA team, especially Las Vegas, and you already have major names like Magic that's leading this, I don't think you'll have a problem bringing in capital. LeBron has supposedly been rumored to want to be a piece of this. Is that something he does post-retirement? I don't know. But yeah, I think it's really interesting. My question for you is like, so the two main cities that are up for contention, right? You named a couple, but like really the two up and coming runners are Seattle and Vegas. You think Seattle? I don't agree with you. I think Vegas is a better option. Why do you think Seattle is better than Vegas?
Yeah, so I actually want to touch on Vegas first because obviously it makes a lot of sense for another sports franchise to enter that market. Obviously, it's been validated. They have the Golden Knights there with the NHL team. The Raiders moved from Oakland to LA, and they've gotten a lot of traction there. WNBA, Las Vegas Aces, they actually won the chip as well, and they solidified that basketball has a major interest within the city as well. F1 has taken over the city by storm, and so you have a lot of these different sports properties that have entered LA. NBA actually has a really strong relationship with the city because they've been doing the Summer League for nearly 20 years. Right? So they understand how that market works, how it operates, how do you actually, make money from the market and do your best to essentially build out all these different entertainment complexes around sports because sports is essentially taking over the city. But my main case against it is because primarily for the NBA, one of the biggest things that I feel like they need to develop is strong fandom within a city for a team. Okay. Right? I feel like most of the time for the NBA, it's really driven around the players. But you do have these hot markets, right? Like Philadelphia, Los Angeles, Boston, where there's and even Oklahoma City, where the fan base is diehard on their sports team, right? You got the Celtics, you got the Lakers, you got the Thunder, right? Like you go to a OKC game, I mean, the crowd is absolutely roaring. And I don't know if you can replicate that in Vegas, right? It's mainly driven on tourism.
That's true.
And they've actually been suffering quite significantly recently. 7.5% tourism decline in 2025. That's the largest since the Great Recession outside of COVID. Obviously, with COVID and the pandemic, a lot of people left the city, or a lot of people didn't, travel to the city. And I think that it essentially establishes another franchise where it's glitzy and glamorous, but if you want to build real passion within the game itself, I think you got to go to a city like Seattle, where they already had the Supersonics. They have a diehard fan base that essentially their franchise was stripped from them. And I don't want to get into my case on Seattle just yet because I know that you have a city in mind first. I want to hear your take, and then I want to talk about why Seattle is better.
Okay, fair. Okay, everything you said I actually agree with, other than the fact that Vegas shouldn't be the option for this expansion. So here's why I think it should. So I agree that fandom and loyalty is probably what is front of mind when you're thinking about where this expansion should go, this expansion franchise. But I think Vegas is a very interesting one-of-one market that can't be replicated anywhere else, and that the NBA should take advantage of that, right? Of course, there's some now fluctuations and downward trend that you mentioned in tourism, but I don't think the case is for pure basketball demand. It's like it creates a year-round situation for premium events in a luxury real estate machine, right? So just 10 years ago, there were 0 Big Four professional sports teams in Vegas. You mentioned there have been, obviously the subsequent ones that have come. The NHL the Golden Knights came in 2017. WNBA had their Aces begin playing in 2018. The NFL had the Raiders move, of course. F1, we haven't talked about F1. F1 has a Grand Prix in Vegas. Started in 2023, and the MLB A's are now obviously relocated to Vegas, and they're expected to have their ballpark opening in 2028. I think it's a no-brainer that an NBA franchise comes next. Of course, by pure numbers, I think Vegas has less than around maybe half of the population of the metro Seattle area. So like pure volume, I tend to agree. But you don't go from an 11-year window, any city having 0 major sports teams, to all of that motion. And I think Vegas is different. It skipped the normal city building sequence where you go and you get one team, you prove that there's support, and then you slowly build systems around them and fandom around it. They did the exact opposite. They had like tentpole events, sporting events like Summer League, like F1, that would come every once in a while, showed that there's a premium luxury scenario and kind of situation that can be built around it. And then it kind of proves that there is a market that can come and there's stuff that you can build around the premium aspects, right? Vegas are obviously has the big, gambling, gaming, and entertainment culture. Is there a way that team kind of leans in and like embraces that, influencer, celebrity, entertainment kind of halo effect, right? Well, you have influencers coming to, it's very similar to like F1 in Miami, right?
Yeah.
Like, I don't think anybody or very few people of these influencers are actually going to Miami because they like love F1 during it, right? It's a very sceney thing. Can you create like a premium team like that in the NBA? I don't know. I think it's interesting.
Yeah, I think it's a next step for NBA to continue to expand on its luxury experiences and solidify itself as a premium entertainment experience. And I think Vegas would be the next step for it. I think if you switch it around, though, I think Vegas actually really needs an NBA franchise, right? Because tourism used to be driven on, right, like the experiences there with, clubbing, gambling, etc., right? It's obviously Sin City and it has its allure. But like I said, the tourism is declining. I think if you get an NBA franchise there, right, now you have, NBA is probably one of the longest seasons with 82 regular season games. You now are extending reasons for people to travel to Vegas, to go there. Hey, I want to go catch, the Vegas game. Obviously, there's no name for a franchise just
What would
yet.
you name it?
Oh. I was going to say the Vegas Valkyries, but
I was literally the Vikings.
WNBA team already, or the Vegas Vikings. That could be pretty interesting.
That could be interesting, right?
But I think they would absolutely love a franchise, an NBA franchise specifically, because you have October, potentially all the way to June if they're really, really good and can make it to the finals.
Yep.
Where people will want to stop by and go see an NBA game and then experience everything around it as well. But my take is Seattle, and I want to get into this because Seattle's actually a very much slept-on market right now. Population's grown 6%. To 780,000 plus. It still remains a top 20 U.S. city. Actually, David Aldridge at The Athletic had a great article about why it should go to Seattle over Vegas, and a lot of it has to do with the money, the centralization of money and capital there, right? You have some of the biggest corporate anchors or corporate companies in the world that have headquarters there, right? Amazon, Microsoft, Starbucks, Costco, and there's actually a suburb 30 miles out of the city called Sammamish, hopefully I'm saying it right, where the highest median household income in the U.S. in 2025 at nearly $240,000. So you have a very wealthy fan base, right? They're deeply rich in basketball culture. Actually, if you look at all the star players that have come out of Seattle, you have people like Paolo Banchero, DeJounte Murray, Jaden McDaniels, Jamal Crawford, who still is in Seattle, I believe, and Brandon Roy, obviously Trailblazers legend. They're all there. They're all getting developed. I think this is a fan base that desperately needs an NBA franchise. Obviously, you saw the Seahawks just won the Super Bowl.
Yep.
There's a real sports culture there. And it's just a city that definitely needs a team right now. And I feel like Vegas, look, all these new franchises have come, but I think you need that in-between move where the entire fan base, even the country, I think would support a Seattle franchise over an NBA franchise. I mean, you had guys like Gary Payton, Sean Kemp. These are legends that came out of Supersonics, obviously. They were actually one of my favorite teams to play on NBA 2K back in the day. I mean, there's real history there, and I feel like it needs to happen first before it goes to Vegas.
I honestly could be convinced, man. I mean, I also am curious. I was going back and forth with ChatGPT. Like, does a 31, league team or team league make sense? Like, do they have to expand it to 32 teams?
I think there's some form of realignment where like a team needs to go from the west to east. I think they're looking at like the southern cities that have franchises, like the Rockets. They might move. Potentially, Memphis Grizzlies might move to the east. Honestly, if you're a team on the west and you get to move to the east, you should consider that a blessing. Honestly, based on what the standings look like right now, it's crazy.
Okay, but before we move on, I want to throw out another, wild card city that I would personally pick as a potential contention for an expansion bid. Shout out to Parker Graham at Vestibule. He gave me this idea when I chatted with him earlier this week. He said that Kansas City should be a potential option. They have 2.25 million person metro area, which the downtown is NBA ready, right? T-Mobile Center, another T-Mobile. I guess T-Mobile's got the stadium sponsorships on lock, and that has 18,000 seats for basketball. They obviously Kansas in the Midwest, in particular Kansas, has a huge basketball culture with the Kansas City Jayhawks. Of course, Kansas State, Missouri, but here's the thing, man. Like, Kansas City used to be a host team or host city for an NBA team. And they had the Kansas City Kings there before they got moved to Sacramento in 1985. So, I don't know, just food for thought. I think it's, to be fair, less of a option than Vegas or Seattle.
Definitely not like a tier 1 city, but I mean, I completely agree with you that there is a massive sports culture there. Obviously, basketball really runs it from the college level. But I have this take where I think that if college basketball runs your city or state, it actually doesn't transfer that well to the professional leagues. For example, you have like Carolina, right? Like UNC and Duke just run basketball there. And I feel like there's always been just less attention on the Hornets, right? Like, could you see that same situation happening where, yeah, you have a pro basketball league that comes to Kansas City, but everyone is still just obsessed with Kansas basketball, right? They're not that much affiliated with a new franchise or a new NBA franchise.
No, that's fair. We'll see what happens. Something we'll be keeping, track closely.
Yeah, we'll see what happens at that Board of Governors meeting and like what Adam Silver actually decides.
Yeah, that'll be interesting. And I'm sure, hopefully, it's not a month out again since we get the actual news from when the meetings happen. But moving in other deal news that's happened this week.
We got a new fund alert.
Producer Pablo, we're going to have a kind of sound for that next time. It's a new fund alert. A new private equity firm in sports, Synergy Sports Capital, $150 million private equity fund focused on taking controlling stakes in emerging leagues and related sports assets, was launched and announced this past week. It's founded by Texas A&M legend wide receiver Terrence Murphy Sr., who, after a shortened NFL career, unfortunately, ended up building a multi-billion-dollar real estate empire, and was one of the founding members of Alumni Ventures. Shout out to our friend Keaton Nankoville at Alumni. Hope you're doing well. And yeah, and of course, this is no fun announcement ever goes without a little, Easter eggs in there that surprise everybody. Heisman Trophy winner and one of the GOATs, in my opinion.
Yeah, he is actually one of the GOATs of college football.
Reggie Bush is also a partner in the fund.
Yeah, so I got a lot of takes on this, and actually, for everyone to get more context on Synergy Sports Capital because obviously they're a new fund. They haven't gotten all their capital commitments yet, so we haven't seen what actual moves they made. But they recently had a press release, and I wanted to walk everyone through it and just make certain comments because they take some jabs at other funds actually, and they also are very much more aligned on a long-term play, which typically for private equity it's usually 5 to 7 years. So Synergy Sports Capital announced its official launch, introducing a private equity firm focused on high-growth emerging leagues outside the traditional Big Four, primarily in the lower middle market with strong upside potential. Obviously, that's been a huge trend in sports now, where niche sports are emerging, where you have things like pro paddle, newer leagues that are still around major sports, but outside of the major leagues. For example, you have the MLS for American soccer, but now you have the USL. Right. At the same time, you have women's sports leagues that are popping off. With
NWSL, right? Love B,
Unrivaled. Right.
Yep.
So I feel like those are like potential target investments. The firm is targeting approximately $150 million in capital commitments for its inaugural fund, which will pursue controlling stakes in emerging leagues and related sports ecosystem assets. Now, I do want to make a take on emerging leagues because it's interesting. A lot of times they're raising capital from venture funds, right? Because look, it requires a lot of capital up front. It's going to take 10, 15 years till you actually realize any returns. It's kind of a long-term bet, right? And hopefully the power law actually ends up with emerging leagues. You're probably going to see that, right? You see 10 to 15 new leagues every single week, I swear to God. But in my guess, it's only going to be like a few of them that actually come out victorious, right? We saw things like Grand Slam Track where they went bankrupt. And I think it's very risky. That's why it's interesting that a private equity fund, right, where Terrence was a background in long-term investments, but in much more risk-averse asset classes like real estate, is going into the emerging league space. And so I want to talk a lot about, actually, I want to read this first because this is also a little jab that they had on other funds. Founded by Texas A&M, record-setting wide receiver and second-round NFL draft pick Terrence, the firm is built on the belief in the next era of value creation in sports will come not from minority stakes in mature franchises, but from controlling investments in leagues positioned for structural expansion and growth. Are they trying to mog Arctos and Dynasty?
Yeah, I think they're punching up here. It might be a frame mog on Arctos and Dial and some of the other bigger funds. Yeah. But no, look, I think I was very skeptical when I read this at first, but they actually seem to be doing some things that are interesting that have changed my opinion. So they've already started executing the strategy with one of their portfolio companies. They have an ownership stake in the USL's Atletico Dallas, right? And here's the thing. They're not just taking, investing this $150 million into passive stakes. What they're doing is they have a strategy called Synergy Sports Operating System. So it's a centralized platform that combines tech deployment, data analytics, media strategy, and stadium-anchored real estate developments alongside sports-adjacent businesses. And that's kind of their approach that they're taking that they want to deploy across their entire portfolio. So I think their thing is not just having ownership stakes and controlling ownership stakes, but I think they're going to be actively involved in operating. So I think on the real estate side, they're pretty much covered, I think. But I'm interested to see who else that they bring onto this, team, this investment group. Are they going to have operating partners? Do you just take, league executives that have crushed in the big leagues and then come deploy them across their stuff? Is that a strategy? I'm not entirely sure. But yeah,
And
I'm curious.
one thing that I want to jump in here is that, like I said, right, you would consider emerging leagues as riskier investments. That's why venture capital or VC firms are deploying capital into emerging leagues because they're willing to take that bet. What I love about this operating system that they have is that they want to take bets on the mixed-use projects and sports-adjacent ventures because they believe it can de-risk the asset class entirely, right? Atletico Dallas, for example, the USL franchise. I'm guessing that it's not going to be a profit-making machine, specifically the team, right? But the real estate that you build around it, if you're able to generate a strong fan base and you're able to build some of these ancillary entertainment venues around it, those could be profit machines that help de-risk for a lot of the LPs or limited partners who would want to give money to this fund. And I think that's a really smart strategy. They also are looking for other assets that are synergistic where they can use the same operating system. It seems like they're going to have some very tech-savvy people that are going to be on the team to help with this deployment. Yep. And lastly, I do want to shout out Terrence because this guy is an absolute beast. Actually, I'm looking at his landing page right here. It's actually very, very pretty.
Did you see his LinkedIn? Like
I actually didn't see
his
his LinkedIn.
experience at Texas A&M. I was thinking about just listing off the amount of honors he's gotten. It would have sounded too crazy. It would have been like a promo for him, and we don't even know the guy yet. So, Terrence, eventually hope to meet you, man. Big fans of what you're doing, obviously, and would love to chat more about this. But yeah, I mean, I want to ask, I want to go down this rabbit hole a little further, right? Like, what makes people interested in emerging leagues, right? Like, I think it's a cool concept when you think about it in concept, like a new sports league. It sounds sexy, but
Right.
like, there's a business that needs to be built, and it's a new concept most of the time. And how do you actually drive demand for it? Here's what I think, right? Like, there's a bunch of things that he said. There's like media and data and real estate. I actually think, here's my strategy if I was, Terrence, and if I was like executing this. I think you need a media thesis first. You need to build a clear story, distribution. You need to, have people excited, just know about you, I guess, at first, right? And like show people that you exist, show that this league exists close to them, invite them to come out, right? And you create repeatable content hooks, maybe leaning into, Gen Z.
Showcase the players, right?
Yeah.
Like build out their personalities as well. No, people might not know them, but they're all very interesting people. I mean, these are professional athletes that we're talking about, right? Whether it's a niche sport or it's a league like the USL, which could be considered as inferior to MLS, but the talent is there, the people are there, the stories are there.
Yeah, and I think the premium live experiences are third. After you have a big media thesis, then you have a focus on players, so turning them into stars. I think the next is that you create like premium live experiences, whether that's like programming during off season. You have like concerts that are coming in. Is it like embedded into the actual game itself, where you have pre-game, post-game stuff where it's very pop culturally, culturally zeitgeist and relevant?
How do they utilize the arena when no one's playing in it,
Exactly.
right? Like they're gonna have to build out new infrastructure, right? And they definitely have things in mind for it.
And then when you build those three tentpole things, I think the last thing is the adjacent real estate, right? Like then you have kind of a canvas of foot traffic that has come in. Then do you stand up bars, restaurants, hotels, gaming venues, entertainment
Get a
stuff.
steakhouse in there,
Right? Yeah, like it ain't Outback.
Yeah.
I mean, what I haven't seen one. When's the last time you've seen an Outback Steakhouse?
Honestly, there's
Do they
one
still
really.
exist?
Yeah, they do. I think there's one like in Johns Creek, like where
really?
we're from. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Anyway, yeah, but I think that's the approach that I would take. I think it would be media first, then turn once you have attention coming to the league itself, start focusing that media on the players itself, turn them into stars. Then you focus on like how do you get premium live experiences integrated in and around the team and league itself, and then you go into the real estate and the adjacent kind of actual build outs. But that's what I think. And then here's the thing. There's a couple different leagues that I was looking at. It seems that NWSL might be there's so many cool leagues and emerging properties. I don't know how much 150 million will actually be able to get
get a controlling stake.
Operate it. Do you spray and pray across like multiple different things? Do you do like pro paddle league? Do you do like pickleball leagues? Do you do smaller stuff like that, like USL, teams? Do you take like bigger swings? You might have enough capital to maybe get an
like
NWSL
4
team.
franchises were under your belt. Yeah.
Or hey, TGL, right? That's a really interesting
that could be an
opportunity.
interesting one.
Unrivaled, I don't know what that will look like. Professional Women's Hockey League, that's an interesting one. Haven't found too many numbers out there publicly about that, but
about the valuations, yeah,
but it's interesting. If I was him, I would look at or the team. Pro Paddle League is super interesting to me right now, and I think the TGL type stuff, women's TGL that obviously was just announced, I think that stuff is super interesting. But I digress. And here's the thing. That was on one side of the fund announcement. The other fund that was announced this week
is a big one. This is a big one.
Completely different side of the scale of strategy, size, approach, all this stuff. So CVC Capital Partners, the 6th largest private equity firm in the world, has raised $4.3 billion for its global sports group division after agreeing to a unique financing deal with PIMCO and KKR. Shout out KKR. It's their second move in sports in like a month.
And it actually makes sense for their thesis.
Yeah. So Global Sports Group, GSG, is valued around $8 billion. And yeah, KKR also committed $231 million for about a 6% stake in GSG. And yeah, CVC has invested about $5 billion into the sports assets that are run by GSG since 2018. And now I think they're looking for what an exit might look like in the next, 2 to 3 years. Is it, a big, sale? Is it an IPO? Let's talk about it. I think there's a lot of cool things.
So I have a few takes on this. So first, congratulations to CVC and the Global Sports Group for this massive fundraise. I think they were hitting they hit a $7 billion euros or 7 billion euros.
So $8 billion USD.
$8 billion USD. But their target was actually 9 billion euros, and they weren't able to raise that amount of capital, which is a little bit surprising because if you've seen a lot of these recent fundraisers for these like mega funds going into sports, typically they're able to get the fund commitments and honestly sometimes get an oversubscribed fundraising round. This was a little bit different, which is surprising because CVC is one of the OG mega private equity funds that were investing in sports. Actually, one of their first investments in sports was taking a controlling stake in F1. I think back in like 2006, they ended up selling for $8 billion plus in 2016, which was more than 4x their investment. Obviously, we've seen how amazing of a sports property F1 is, and it's quite long lasting. So they've done a phenomenal job there. And then they made a lot of investments post-COVID into sports, right? They were one of the first to actually look at this as an asset class that deserves institutional investments, and they made a series of bets. Their main focus was looking at under-commercialized assets. So they look at, and instead of just franchises, you go look at media rights, the commercial arms around a specific league. So some investments that they've made in the past couple of years include La Liga's media rights. I think they have like a 10 to 11% stake, and they essentially get payments, media rights payments flowing in for the next 50 years. They invested $2 billion in that. They also invested in League One, which is like France's football's media arm as well, for $1.5 billion. They also invested a lot in rugby, Premiership Rugby, United Rugby Championship, Six Nations as well. Invested in global volleyball with Volleyball World.
Did you say United Rugby Championship?
Yeah, I think so. Cool. Yeah, and then WTA Ventures as well. So they're looking at some of these, I would consider not really niche sports, but like rugby hasn't, had its moment yet. But they're willing to take a bet on that. However, some of these bets don't go just as well as they expect, right? First, you have the investment that they made in League One. League One Media, obviously, it made sense at the time. They acquired it in 2022, so a little bit after COVID. A lot of these media rights deals came at a discount in sports because it was post-pandemic, right? Like sports, they all really need the cash up front because they canceled their seasons. And so that makes all these assets quite cheaper. But that league specifically has been dealing with a lot of issues. Obviously, we know about PSG, right? That's one of the biggest teams in the world. They're always fighting for the finals in the Champions League. But the league itself doesn't have that much competition. And they ended up leading into DAZN deal, their deal with the media rights company DAZN. It fell apart after mediation failed in April 2025. DAZN actually withheld $70 million, and that's what caused the drop in the value of media rights in League One. And so that was one miss that they had. Second was Premiership Rugby. Took a majority stake, but 3 clubs have already went bust in the 2022-2023 season. Many others are on life support as well because there's just not that much traction yet.
Damn, they were really bullish on rugby.
Yeah, like they made a lot of big bets that obviously, you got to make some big swings, but they missed. And so typically you're able to have an oversubscribed sports round, but those are a lot for the private equity funds that haven't made investments in sports quite considerably or had a focused arm for sports. CVC has had that, but they made these 2 misses, and I feel like that's what hurt them when it came to hitting their target.
Okay, well, I feel like we've been talking a lot about what hasn't been working for CVC and GSG in particular, but they recently just had an acquisition of Equine Network, right? This is the largest for-profit equestrian sport league and platform in the U.S. It operates about 40 owned events and 800 sanctioned third-party events, and like they've had they're addressing like a $2.5-3 billion equestrian-based sports market. They took a controlling stake just a few weeks ago, right? And the deal was worth about $300 million. And yeah, I think I was super bullish on this. Like, I really haven't heard much of, I'm not really in that world, but it seems like it's a very nascent private equity roll-up type strategy opportunity.
Right, pretty
there.
Fragmented market.
Right.
And at the same time, you have a wealthy consumer base. I think one of their tournaments actually has an $18 million prize pool. So it seems like the people that are involved in horse sports, or sporting in the horse scene, equestrian scene, they got deep pockets.
Yeah.
And so they want to take advantage of that. And at the same time, I think it's going to be a continually growing sport.
Did I see that the average family that participates in equestrian sports or follows equine, I don't even know if I'm saying
Equine Networks.
Equine Networks, okay. Has $1 million
Average income.
average income. Is that right? Did you see that?
I think I saw that. Yeah.
Yeah. I'll have to double check that. Producer Pop double check that, but that's really interesting. But here's the cool thing about covering Synergy Sports Capital and then GSG in the same week, right? So CVC has, like you mentioned, was previously in Formula One, and they took a majority stake, and now they're favoring taking minority investments in leagues, tournaments, and organizing body levels. And it's an interesting kind of dichotomy from what Synergy Sports Capital is doing that we just mentioned. Obviously, much smaller fund, but they want to take up-and-coming investments in up-and-coming leagues and teams and properties for a controlling stake. It's just interesting to see. I think they're playing two completely different games, obviously, but I just think it's one worth just talking about and mentioning.
It shows how diverse the investments you can have in sports.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, I agree. What do you think works better if you had to pick between one or two?
Pick between Synergy Sports or CVC.
The strategy.
The strategy. Okay. In my opinion, I think I would go with CVC because one, obviously you got deeper pockets, right? You have a $8 billion fund, a lot of money to play with. And at the same time, you're not taking extremely risky bets on franchises. You're looking at under-commercialized assets, primarily leagues, where you can make a lot of money from the commercial arm and the media arm. With the franchise, right, you have to really over-index on, is there a strong enough fan base? Is it going to continue as a fan base? You're also taking on risk from the league itself, right? Because you have to underwrite the league if you're underwriting the franchise too. And at the same time, they're looking at emerging leagues. These are properties that haven't existed for the past 5 years, right? You only can see the historical data might only be 2 to 3 years. I think CVC can play in different markets that puts them in an advantage. And at the same time, they could make another big swing again that could lead to that F1 investment that they had back in 2006, right? Maybe they identify that next league and they're able to make that big swing. I think with Synergy Sports Capital, you're playing with a lot of fire here. But obviously, I think there's an opportunity for them to make a huge return. It just depends on the bets that they make.
Fair. Moving on to what I think is some of the most interesting things that have happened in college sports as of recent. On March 6th, President Donald Trump posted a Saving College Sports Roundtable and hosted it in the White House with major college sports and political figures to discuss the NIL era, athlete pay, transfer rules, kind of all these things that are happening and everyone's talking about around college athletics. Reported attendees include Nick Saban, SEC Commissioner, Greg Sankey, Notre Dame's AD, NCAA President Charlie Baker, Marco Rubio, House Speaker Mike Johnson, Nick Saban, of
course. They had Tim Tebow in there as well.
Tim Tebow. Yeah. But here's the thing. The pushback is they had such a star-studded lineup, there was no players, and they were talking about everything that has to revolve around players itself. So that was kind of the pushback there. Like, why would you not get college athletes that are currently playing? Fernando Mendoza would have been a nice, ambassador.
Yeah, a little ambassador there. Yeah.
I guess he's kind of like heading into the NFL now, but would have been cool. But yeah, kind of the biggest headline here is that there's been a bunch of discussion, kind of fragmentation around what's not been working in college athletics, right? Basically, NIL has become a de facto pay-for-play bidding market. There's boosters and schools are paying for players and they're hopping around. It doesn't seem like a typical college experience or the ones that student athletes used to have, right? There's no governing kind of federal.
Yeah, there's no federal
framework.
Enforcement for any of this.
Right, so there's state by state rules, and that clearly needs to be fixed. The transfer portal is super loose, so now you see players that are just literally transferring for the sake of money.
Year after year after year are transferring.
Right, and can you blame them? I mean, the system allows that, and I guess they're taking advantage of it, and it's not against the rules. That's what the current landscape has led it to become. Nick Saban was very vocal about this, but eligibility length, right? You have players that are now 25, 26 that have had 7 or 8 years now that are competing with 18-year-olds. How is that fair? That's not fair. And of course, overall, there's a couple other things in antitrust, and they don't want, athletes they want to avoid a situation where, these athletes are basically employees of the schools, right? So where then there might lead to a CBA negotiation,
Right.
and we've seen what's happening with the WNBA right now, right? But a lot of interesting things. What do you think was the most interesting takeaway from the discussion? And like, what can we expect? Like, he said he was going to sign an executive order in a week. We still haven't heard anything, correct? Like,
Yeah.
what is? So tell us what's going to come from this.
Yeah, so I have a lot of takes on this, but I think it really comes down to this is actually a method for the Trump administration, along with key college sports league leaders, to put more pressure on Congress to pass the SCORE Act. Right, the SCORE Act has been in discussion within the House for quite a while. Actually, Speaker Mike Johnson said that at some point, I think they have the votes to get it passed through the House, but right now the Senate, they do not have enough votes for. And I'll break down kind of what the SCORE Act really does. So first, it codifies the House settlement, which essentially instituted NIL and what it is today. The $2.8 billion back pay for all the athletes who missed out on NIL payments if they were able to play in this era.
How far does it go back? Do you know?
I'm not sure, but I think it's it could be a decade plus.
Wait, so if I played college basketball, hypothetically 9 years ago, I would get paid for that?
You get paid, but at the same time, there's been so many college athletes that have come into the mix, right?
Yeah.
It is a big pay package, right? But it spans years, but also spans thousands and thousands of athletes, maybe tens of thousands of athletes, right? You also have a $20.5 million a year revenue sharing agreement where essentially colleges can now pay for players, right? But at the same time, it's not codified in federal law, right? This is just a Supreme Court case. That means that states can interpret this however they would like, and that creates advantages and disadvantages for what states want to do, right? There's been talks where certain NIL packages for players wouldn't be okay if there was a federal law that essentially aligned with House, but there's no way to enforce it, so they get away with it. Second is antitrust exemption for the NCAA and conferences, right? They've essentially lost all power when it comes to enforcing certain rules, and because of that, they're put in a disadvantage, and they're kind of losing that centralization that typically professional leagues are able to benefit from, like your major leagues with the NBA, NFL. They don't have that much power anymore. They also want to, with the SCORE Act, they'll wipe out all these different state laws on NIL, centralize it into one, so there's never any discussion about that.
Yeah.
And at the same time, put a no employee clause, which is huge for this because that would actually be a huge cost burden for a lot of athletic departments if they have to start paying for healthcare, wages, benefits for every single college athlete. And I also think it kind of strays away from this whole talk, which Saban, this is his main take, is that it strays away from what college is really about, right? It's really about education and academia, right? It's an academic institution, but if college athletes are employees, it kind of misaligns with what the whole purpose of why they're there. Obviously, for a lot of them, they have professional hopes and they can make it to professional leagues, but that's not the case for everyone. And so I think they want to realign this, and they're not able to pass it in Congress. So that's why Trump is bringing all these key leaders and is putting pressure on Congress by talking about a potential executive order. Now, I don't think an executive order actually can do much because it's not codified in law. So it's kind of just like hearsay, just discussions, right? But I think it really comes down to Congress pulling the trigger. Otherwise, nothing's going to happen.
Yeah, and it was interesting. Like, President Trump said that he misses the era of college sports where, student athletes and scholarships were the main mechanism between the school and the athlete. I don't think we'll ever go back to that.
Yeah,
candidly.
I think even the SCORE Act is okay with college players getting paid. It just there needs to be a legitimate system in place in order for it not to get extremely out of hand.
Yeah, but we've also spoken to a few college coaches in the past few weeks, and we're hearing how much these student athletes are getting paid. Wow, if I was making that much money,
yeah, I know. It's
I probably would have tried to pursue
honestly,
it. Yeah, I would have stayed in college.
Honestly, think about all the women's basketball players where they're looking at the WNBA and there could be a potential lockout. Why would you not just stay another year, right? Because you're getting paid millions of dollars of brand endorsements, sponsorships. At the same time, your college might just be directly paying you.
Yeah. So we'll see what happens. Obviously, I hope that throughout all of this, that while there's more capital and the student athletes are getting empowered, I really hope that we don't lose sight of they're still kids at the end of the day, and that they're coming for an education, and that's what's prioritized. So that's my take. But staying on the topic of college, something really interesting. Professional Bull Riders, PBR, is the leading standalone bull riding property, and operates as a hybrid traveling live event roadshow and team-based league that's owned by TKO. So they have had 800 plus riders from multiple different countries. They have 200 events, more than 200 events annually, and they have 10 team-based or team PBR teams. They are now actively pursuing a new strategy where they're entering college campuses in a new live event distribution channel by pairing bull riding with major country music acts and now collegiate rodeo, which is really, really cool. So the newest move is called PBR Bulls and Beats. It was announced yesterday, and it'll debut at Colorado State's Canvas Stadium on July 10th to the 12th as a 3-day event combining the 2026 PBR team's season opener alongside the inaugural Collegiate All-Star Rodeo, which is really interesting, and I want to talk about, which I didn't know about before, and concerts from Brad Paisley, Bailey Zimmerman, and Miranda Lambert.
Perfect combination of pairing bull riding with country music.
So it's like bull riding, a college environment with a bunch of college kids, and country music, and just like it just seems like a big party festival all centered around that. It seems like a hit in my eyes. But look, it's not a new tradition and a new thing actually, right? PBR has already brought its last Cowboy Standing event to Colorado State University last year in July of 2025. And it drew over 25,000 fans in less than 2 days. And that's the exact format that helped shape this 2026 version. So as we speak, Colorado State is what PBR currently has. PBR is in Florida State today and tomorrow for the PBR Florida State at DOAC. And they're basically turning FSU's football stadium into a PBR venue with concerts with John Party and Miranda Lambert for this weekend. If I was a college student, I would be very excited. I think there's 100%. A way to enact it. And the last thing I'll say is it's not just a big party or live event festival that's the appealing part. So they're no longer renting. PBR is no longer just renting a stadium and attaching a concert to it and making it, a fun, cool live experience. So they're adding a collegiate ecosystem layer. So the new Collegiate All-Star Rodeo features 60 riders from Learfield's 19 college rodeo partners with a $180,000 total prize pool.
Wow.
Which is super interesting, right?
Yeah, that's actually crazy.
No one is talking about this. This seems like more. So
yeah, because I think it's still. I would consider it like in that emerging league category where it's like not that many people know about PBR. But it's huge. And actually, so this is funny enough. Back in my investment banking days, actually, TKO is actually majority owned by Endeavor, which is majority owned now by Silver Lake.
Yep.
And so they actually spun out PBR from the Endeavor Holdco to TKO. And it makes sense because if you look at TKO and all of its assets, right, you have WWE, UFC, and now PBR. What they love to do is find these sports assets where there's a die-hard fan base, where people will always tune in no matter what, right? Because growth will come. It just comes down to, do people really care about this or not? And this is actually within the culture, right, for states like Colorado, within the South. Now, I guess Florida as well. People are interested in PBR or just in bull riding in general, and they align that with PBR. And if you look at college campuses, so you went to Georgia Tech, I went to Penn, all of our buddies who went to, a lot of these state schools too, and SEC, ACC, etc. I swear to God, there is a bar in your college town with a mechanical bull, right? It is it's popular thing. It's always popular. It's always something that's interesting. And if you look actually their demographics of PBR fans, it skews young. It doesn't skew old, which makes sense.
Which is a good thing.
Good thing, right? It's I think the core demographic, it's 55% male, 45% female, which is surprising. You would expect it to be like...
Wait, repeat those numbers again?
55% male, 45% female.
Okay, wow.
Right?
I thought it would have been way larger
of a difference,
yeah.
right? And it's... 25 to 34 years old, high school or college diploma, right? Like it's literally perfect for the youngster who's going into college, sees these new exciting sports, and now it's coming to their campus. And I think it's the perfect way to go to market for PBR.
I mean, I'm surprised they haven't. I'm sure they've looked at it, but maybe there's things that are blocking it that I don't know that I didn't,
Yeah, it's a little bit dangerous of a sport.
Yeah,
Honestly,
but
people
like-
are getting injured.
Yeah, but I'm
like-
surprised they haven't approached like Texas yet, right? Like any of the Texas schools as a collegiate partner. It seems like
Yeah.
that's like a layup, but
Oh,
I don't know.
100%.
Oklahoma
I think it'll come.
too. I think they're. It's so. Here's the thing, right? So I read that now, because of last year's success at Colorado State and this year's announcement, there's been an inbound of college athletic directors and programs that are reaching out to PBR to host this kind of event and explore this partnership, because what it's doing is it's bringing ancillary kind of non-Showtime revenue.
Yeah,
right?
you get, and it's bringing the artists
It's
too.
It's bringing the artists. It's you're utilizing. You're turning a underutilized asset. There's nothing happening on the football field during this time into a huge revenue generating opportunity. I think it's super smart. Like it's kind of like this emerging league kind of thing that's happening. That minor league folks
Right.
are now thinking about it for the minor, as private equity folks are rolling up minor league teams. How do you create year-round programming? I think the exact same
Like
concept.
you can be so much more creative when you're a smaller league,
Yeah.
because like you can just do different things that a lot of professional leagues can't.
And we haven't seen that in the college space. And now I think we're starting to see that. And I think this would be a hit. Like if this was it at my school, I would have
100%.
definitely gone, right, when I was in school. But cool. And outside of the domestic things that are happening, I think there's been a lot of international stuff in sports and non-sports that we want to that have been happening. And like, I didn't think we'd ever have to talk about it at the show, but it has impacted sports. Here's the big picture. There's, kind of the geopolitical tensions that are happening in the Middle East have kind of impacted some of the planned logistics and scheduling in the sports world as it pertains to events that were happening in the Gulf region. So specifically, Formula One had its races in Bahrain and Saudi Arabia.
This coming month, in April.
In April, this coming month, in serious doubt of whether they're going to continue. I think right before the show, we saw that Bahrain,
Saudi Arabia is officially canceled.
Saudi
their
Arabia's,
race.
yeah, and I frankly, I think Bahrain will be a close second there too. And the Formula One governing body said that they would most likely cancel without trying to replace them. So that's going from a 24 race season to 22. That is crazy, right?
What's the how much dollars are they gonna lose?
Yeah, so I looked into this. So probably, to answer your question straightforward, anywhere from $80 to $110 million is lost in top line revenue for F1 during the season. So Liberty Media said that F1 generated about $3.9 billion of revenue in 2025, and race promotion revenue made up about 27% of that total. And that applies about $1 billion of race promotion revenue for the year. That's spread across 24 races, and that averages about $43 million per race. So if you add those two up, you're getting close to $90 million, excuse me. So it's crazy, and I wish that I've been a growing Formula One fan, obviously through Drive to Survive, kind of put me on, and I've put most people on. It's interesting that it's unfortunate that they can't move it, obviously with all the logistical stuff and all of the bespoke nature of the sport in F1. I guess this is what they have to settle for, and they have to cancel without replacing it.
Yeah, so I think it's obviously a big loss for F1. I think it's a devastating loss for the GCC countries, Bahrain and Saudi Arabia. I was actually looking at the economic impact that F1 has on some of these countries. Bahrain is actually a very small country as well. Their total economic impact for the F1 since they've had the races in 2004 has been $1.3 billion. If you actually just look on a yearly basis, the share of Bahrain's GDP that's aligned with all the tourism and the spend that comes around the F1 Grand Prix is around $394 million, 3% of their GDP. Jobs created per race week has been 3,000. 3,000 are going to be gone, right? And so you're losing all this economic value, and same with Saudi Arabia as well. I mean, even a bigger race, 20,000 jobs that are being created. They have a massive sports ecosystem and economy as well. And a lot of it hinged on their relationship with F1, right? That's something that they've been always building upon, and now they're losing that race. And I think this what the most important piece on all of this goes to show that GCC right now, a lot of these countries, you have the UAE, Bahrain, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, right? They've had a major reliance on oil. A way for them to diversify has actually been sports and tourism.
And they've been doing it successfully.
They have been doing
right?
extremely successessly, right? You're seeing Abu Dhabi, they have preseason games for the NBA. At the same time, they're always down for new initiatives from the major pro leagues, even, and we're going to get to this too, Fanatics with Riyadh, Fanatics Flag Football Classic in Riyadh.
That's a perfect segue. So it's not just F1 that was impacted by kind of the geopolitical tensions that are happening in the Middle East. Fanatics' Flag Football Classic, one of these tentpole new initiatives that was happening, spearheaded by Michael Rubin and Tom Brady, headlining a lot of stuff, was set to be played in Riyadh on March 9th, or not on March 9th, on March 21st. And it was reported on March 9th that they moved from Riyadh to Los Angeles. So good thing that they're still doing it. That's kind of the silver bullet here. But here's the interesting thing. They're doing it on the same day still, March 21st in LA, but now it's at BMO Stadium. And the interesting thing is that that's where the 2028 Olympics are having their flag football game as well. So it seems like an interesting way to trial run and test run whether this can work on a media level, a production level, an on-field level, and as just a business level as a whole. Cool to see that the star-studded performance is still happening. I'm excited to see what it actually happens. But once again, right, like the kind of overarching theme here is that this was another key thing that was supposed to happen in the Middle East that unfortunately could not happen because of the world events. But it's exciting to see that it's still happening.
It's still happening. And so one thing about that as well, it's good that it's happening because Fanatics had a ton of content around Flag Football Classic that was in production. They obviously launched Fanatics Studio as well pretty recently.
Exactly.
And they had One More Drive, which is a documentary on Tom Brady coming out of retirement to play flag football. They also had massive production. Flag Football Classic is actually going to be airing on Fox. That was going to be the case if they're in Riyadh. But I think this is also kind of a loss as well because flag football is in the Olympics. They want to internationalize the sport, which is why it would be good to go overseas and play this game. And they're losing out on that opportunity. And Riyadh capturing all that attention where they're aligning with the biggest Western or biggest American sport that we have, right? And so I think it's good that it's still happening, but I don't think what the production and what was going to happen in Riyadh could be replaced.
Yeah, I think what was going to happen in Riyadh would have been amazing. It would have been like crazy to see.
It would have been dazzling. I think it would have been.
Yeah, and I think as the world continues to see the Gulf as a reliable growth market, specifically around premium events, sovereign capital, sports, it's just a reminder that sometimes the geopolitical tensions still can impact things like that. But as people say, the world of sports kind of brings people from different sides together. I hope this is another way that the world will reconcile and that sports can be used as a connection between the divide currently. But yeah, moving on. We touched on this earlier in our intro, but the two coolest, I think, companies and the hottest companies in tech right now have partnered together, Polymarket and Palantir. They've partnered with TWG AI, the AI arm of Holdco that's run by Mark Walter and Thomas Tull.
And they own the Lakers.
And and they own the LA Lakers. And he was the founder of
Guggenheim?
Yeah. So exposure to the LA Dodgers, of course, right? So basically, I'll give a rundown. And I want to discuss this with you, but it's basically a compliance and integrity partnership aimed at helping Polymarket identify and prevent and report suspicious activity in sports contracts specifically. So Bloomberg also reported that it'll screen against lists of people already banned in sports betting across sports books. And it's super interesting, right? Like as there's been a lot of discourse with prediction markets happening, taking a stance of it's true price discovery, and we've been okay with kind of insider trading and insider info influencing the price of stuff. It seems to be a very contrast approach that Shane Copland, the CEO of co-founder of Polymarket, has taken And I think it's for the better. I mean, I think it's pretty interesting.
So I think this move is absolutely pivotal in the next step that they needed to do, because a lot of these prediction markets, they rely on the sports trade or the events contracts market within sports, right? Like Kalshi is highly over-indexed on sports trade specifically. Polymarket less so because they haven't entered the American market, but this is the next step for, to showcase the leagues and teams like, hey, we're actually trying to stop insider trading rather than promote it, which I feel like is a misconception around prediction markets. Recently, Tarek actually posted on LinkedIn where he wanted...
Tarek, the CEO and co-founder of Kalshi. Right?
Yeah, thank you. So Tarek posted on LinkedIn recently, about a month ago. There was a lot of discourse because he was on CNBC talking to Andrew Sorkin, where they were pressing him on whether insider trading was allowed. This was specifically about the Super Bowl, where there was a bunch of contracts where it was like, what is the first song that's going to be performed in the halftime show, right? And they're talking about, okay, if a dancer that knows what the set's going to look like and knows what song is going to come first, if they placed a bet, would that be considered insider trading? What about the janitor who's cleaning up in the arena, and they see, oh, this is the set list, this is the first song that's going to get played? Is that considered insider trading, right? Typically, if that were to happen for a public company, one in a normal market, right? If that were to happen, they would actually have the janitor sign an NDA, right? Because that could affect the stock market specifically and trades that are made if that information gets leaked. But for something so trivial as like a Super Bowl halftime show, that would never be the case. You would never have a janitor sign an NDA because you know the first song that Bad Bunny is going to perform. And so Tarek was talking about what that actually means, and he had a great post about it and like talking about whether prediction markets actually encourage insider trading, because that's the rumor that that's what the discourse has been about. And so what he said was, on insider trading, some say insider information can make prediction markets more accurate, but the same argument can be made for stock markets, where insider trading is banned. Insider trading erodes trust. When people believe a market's unfair, they stop trading, liquidity dries up, volume collapses, and the market dies. Also, allowing it could incentivize bad actors to leak information they shouldn't. So, Kalshi bans insider trading. And so what he's essentially saying is that if the stock markets aren't going to allow it, we're not going to allow it as well. And what we're going to do is provide as much resources as we can to detect, investigate, and enforce any wrongdoing about that.
Yeah, so it's funny you mentioned that. I was also going to say Polymarket is not the only prediction market platform that's cracking down on this. Kalshi is doing the exact same thing. You brought up the concept of a dancer or a janitor potentially being insider for a trade that would happen on the first song for a Super Bowl. I don't know if you saw this. This happened this past week recently, actually. MrBeast recently fired his editor, one of his editors, after accusations of insider trading on Kalshi. So he had $4,000 roughly on streaming markets related to MrBeast, who hit with like near perfect precision, and obviously had access to non-public information. And Kalshi suspended the editor for 2 years on their platform and fined him $20,000 and alerted the federal regulators. Bro really got like the axe handed to him, right?
Exactly.
And I think he got fired. Like he got fired, right? So like, his life kind of just changed. It seems like such a value and kind of money arbitrage that it seemed the prediction markets presented to initially when they were touching the consumer market, but now you're seeing this stuff. They're partnering with everybody, not just on the commercial side, but also on this integrity front, which is super interesting. And you bring up a really interesting point, Siraj, that I want to go down a little bit, is like the most interesting people that are impacted by this are insiders. Think about like management. Think about friends of these athletes, creators, celebrities, the inner circles, right? Like that's who you're cracking down on. And I think that's, no one really thinks about that they could be the ones that are, leaking all this stuff and creating self-arbitrage.
So, and what makes prediction markets harder to regulate is because you have to tie all these parties together for very like niche and nuanced contracts that you never expected. For example, like what color Gatorade is gonna be poured on the winners, right? Like that's very hard for you to figure out, but someone who like works at the stadium could know that information, right? And so that's why Polymarket is partnering with a high-tech company like Palantir, because you need those resources in order to track everything, right? It's not just KYC. It's looking at literally what are all the people that they know, tracking the different trades that they're making at what volumes, right?
Yeah.
There's a lot more data that goes into prediction markets than traditional sports books and traditional gambling, which means that you have to put a lot more resources in order to track it down. Now, a lot of people get confused on what counts as insider trading or not, because the video editor gets fired, but then you hear some story where like someone knew something about something and they're able to make a lot of money on prediction markets. So I wanted to clarify that so people understand what it actually means to insider trade on prediction markets.
Yeah.
So there's 3 main violation categories. One is misappropriation. So trading for personal gain while possession of material non-public information obtained during an employment relationship in breach of a pre-existing duty of trust and confidence to the source of that information. So that's why the MrBeast guy, or the video editor, that's why he got fired, because he worked for MrBeast, knew insider information about MrBeast operations, and made money off that, right? But if it was someone who, like the janitor who just witnessed something, that's information asymmetry. That's actually what prediction markets are okay with, because it helps get everyone closer to the truth using market trades. The second is influence over outcomes. There's actually a really funny story about this. Trading in a contract over which the trade has direct or indirect influence over the outcomes. A political candidate betting on their own race. So there was actually someone who was running for, I believe, the governor of Florida, and he bet on himself that he was going to win the election. And Kalshi immediately flagged the trade, and banned him for, I think, like 5 years.
Wow.
So you can't bet on yourself, basically. And then third is tipping, an insider misappropriating confidential information and sharing it with others so they can trade on it. So if you're a sports player and you tell your parents or something like, hey, like trade the under 5 rebounds because like I'm just not going to rebound today, that would obviously be a form of tipping.
I think this is a great move for the prediction markets. I think there's been a lot of scrutiny of like, are these basically like sports betting, gambling platforms? What is the impact downstream for the rest of the youth or just the rest of the society? But I think they're making interesting things like this, interesting partnerships to make sure that they're like actually cracking down on the bad actors. I think it's just one thing we haven't talked about yet is just I just want to mention before we move on. Palantir, right? Like we haven't really talked about Palantir. They're a defense tech company, probably one of the hottest companies. Obviously, their CEO, Alex Karp, pretty well known.
Yeah,
people that
quite
built
neurodivergent.
Right. Yeah. He was on TBPN today or yesterday, I believe. Interesting interview. But they've continued to just be like the de facto kind of in the background tech across multiple different industries. And this is not their only thing that they've done in sports. So they've done a Ferrari motorsports operation where they've kind of helped be the tech for Ferrari's power unit engineers to both at the track and to optimize performance and analyze race data more quickly. They work with the European Cricket Network to combine tech and data to grow the game, which is pretty interesting. They've worked in the collectible space with Beckett a couple of years ago to basically turn.
It seems like there's not even a clear trend here. They're just like doing.
They're
stuff
just doing
sports.
stuff.
Yeah.
It's honestly really cool. Yeah, we'll see. Maybe we need to get Palantir as a sponsor on the fourth quarter. Huh?
That would be awesome.
Yeah.
Wait, and before we move on, I do want to point out something about this. So, obviously, Polymarket and Kalshi are making these moves. They're going to make the trading process safer. I don't think it's going to move that much move the needle that much when it comes to sports teams and leagues partnering up with them. So I was doing some research on like why there's pushback on why they don't want to use Polymarket and Kalshi. Even if they're the safest markets in the world, they're regulated by the CFTC, and they don't have to operate on like gaming commissions, where a lot of times you have to have information sharing agreements with sports leagues that you work with. For example, the NBA is asking, hey, like, can you share us like trading data so we can enforce certain rules and restrictions ourselves? And they're like, hey, look, like we're like a federally regulated trading market. Like we just can't do that, right? Because otherwise, it's obviously like creates some form of information asymmetry there, right? Where it might not be as clean because now you have like the NBA in their hands into the market as well. So they can't do that. And I think that's always going to be an issue for them. While sports books are very happy to share their information and data with teams and leagues. So I think it's still going to be some friction for the NBA and NFL to really establish a partnership with a Kalshi or Polymarket. But I think at some point, if the markets are just that safe, they might pull the trigger.
Fair, very fair. And then, of course, this news immediately when I saw the logo it created a natural human reaction of, I don't think any logo has ever created an instant gut reaction from me. But the legendary sports agency and sports and entertainment agency Wasserman is changing its name to The Team. So after public controversy, the agency's founder and CEO, Casey Wasserman, is selling an estimated 40% of his stake, valued at $2 billion. It's a move to rebrand, defounderize, and kind of distance itself from the controversy. And more than anything on the business lens of this, it's an interesting opportunity because this is a once-in-a-decade kind of deal that comes up, ever surfaces, right? And
where you have to sell the company and you have to rebrand.
Yeah, but specifically one of the top talent agencies in the world.
Yeah.
Right. And now you have competitors like CAA, UTA, Endeavor, circling private equity firms that are circling like sharks. Seems like a very interesting thing. Want to get your thoughts on what you thought the logo looked like?
Yeah.
And then this deal as a whole.
So, I mean, obviously you got to make a quick rebrand. It seemed like a lot of their the talent that they're representing were really pressuring to rebrand and like change the name. And so
people like Chappell Roan and left. There a bunch of musicians
like
left.
A-list musicians.
Yeah, John Summit was threatening it. I don't think he left yet, but very vocal.
Yeah, and
which is interesting to see.
So for like the team the team itself had to rebrand and figure out, okay, what's going on? Like, we have to change the name immediately. So they only had, I guess, a few days, a week to decide.
Do you think they hired a PR agencies to rebrand?
So I think it's AI generated. I don't know. Like, it just looks like.
Or the PR agency used AI to
make it. I don't know if there was they just didn't have enough, I think, resources and time to really think this through. Like the team, it literally reminds me of when the Washington Redskins sold.
Yeah, and they changed
it literally to Washington football team.
Yeah.
Like it's almost identical of what just happened here. Now, here's the thing though. Washington football team, it kind of grew on some people. Like I was talking to one of my buddies back when it happened. I think it was like right before they were changing to the Commanders. And he was like, "Oh, they're changing to the Commanders? Like the football team was kind of growing on me." So maybe the team starts growing on people.
Wait, so then do you think a similar thing will happen where they change the team to something else?
Yes, that's what I think is going to happen. So they're going to have this placeholder once they sell to another company and they actually that company makes the decision on like, okay, we're going to do another rebrand that aligns with our vision. I think this will essentially change. I feel like it's just like the most basic name that's just not going to piss anyone off, right? So that's why they picked the team.
Yeah, I'm surprised they went through it was that easy, or I guess
I feel like they shouldn't even publicize it. They should just I don't kind of navigate in the dark and be like, yeah, we kind of just changed it to the team.
So the most probable buyers for the 40% stake seem to be Providence Equity Partners, which are their existing private equity firm, existing investors. So they're most likely to buy, but there's been announcements and kind of just some rumors around Bruin Capital, Arctos, and Publicis being emerged as potential bidders as well. But an interesting thing and a parallel that I want to draw with is we saw late last year, that Excel Sports Management, another big sports agency, was a majority share was bought in them by Goldman Sachs at $1 billion valuation. It's interesting to see these agencies, these marquee agencies, coming up for sale, what their deals look like, who's coming in to buy them. I'm curious though, what your thoughts are, but I definitely think there's a distinct kind of difference between the two deals, right? Excel was kind of looked at as a premium institutional growth asset, right? And then the team is now looked at as, even though it's valued higher, right? There's, it's in the 1.6 to $2 billion range. You have the team looking at kind of the assets kind of viewed as more as being sold under pressure. So I'm wondering, are they going to be sold at a lower valuation because of that than what they would have gotten at that, kind of $2 billion mark? Or I'm kind of curious.
Yeah, so maybe there's a discount. I think it sells for $2 billion is my guess. Private equity firms love talent agencies. If you look at majority of the biggest ones, right? CAA was owned by TPG and then sold to Artemis Group, Francis Pennault's private equity firm, essentially a family office, but a private equity firm. You saw this with Endeavor. They sold to Silver Lake. UTA, I believe EQT has a majority stake in UTA. Now with Excel, I think the Excel sports manager thing is a little bit different because they're purely sports. And I actually like that investment a lot because you get to ride pure market tailwinds on player salaries, right? Because all the players are just getting paid so much more money because media rights are exploding, and all that gets trickled down to the players with these massive revenue share agreements in the NBA and the NFL. And I think that Goldman saw that and they're like, we want to be in this position. Here it's a little bit different because they do a lot in sports, actually a lot with international sports as well, but they also represent in music, TV, film, et cetera, like your traditional agency. But if you actually look at the model, right, I personally like agency businesses a lot. Like I've gotten to see, CAA.
I was going to ask you. Yeah, you worked on the CAA deal,
worked on a CAA deal. I mean, CAA is one of one. It's also one of the biggest talent agencies in the world. But if you figure out a way to control costs with, obviously or maintain costs, because a lot of it's like human capital driven. It's one of the few companies that I think could never be replaced by AI, which also makes it a potential good investment for private equity firms. But agents, I feel like, can do a really good job on scaling how many people that they can represent, right? And so if you do a really good job where you have maybe a lean business, not too many agents, but you represent a wide variety of talent, you can run a very, very profitable business. And I think private equity firms see this as a relatively safe asset that they can grow. And so I don't think it'll be a strategic buyer that comes in. In my opinion, I think a private equity firm takes this.
Yeah, I also don't think there's, they are scarce assets, but and you do make good points on why they're lucrative businesses or why they're interesting and appealing businesses. I also just don't think they have very big multiples, right? They're tied because they're cheap, right? Like the Goldman $1 billion ticket was I think I read somewhere that it was Excel was in the 700 million. They booked $700 million in revenue the year prior. It's very dependent on the client, right? It's like
barely over a 1x.
Yeah, there's not much of a moat, but it is obviously a trophy asset to a certain extent. So that is really cool. Last thing I want to talk about regarding that topic is do you think they give out retention bonuses to the clients that they've retained, or how do you go about the ones they've lost? Do they go give them sweeter offers? How do you even approach new clients then?
I don't think they'll have a problem approaching new clients. Even older clients as well, once a sale happens. You can bake it into the valuation, but I think it's really comes from a brand perspective and what leadership was and the name. But I think that completely will change once they go under new ownership. Yeah, you're going to lose some clients. That's just what it's going to be. But I think there will be a slight discount on just the brand value itself. Also, I just don't like the team name. But but I think that gets baked in, so maybe it gets a little bit less than $2 billion. But I don't think they'll have more trouble getting new clients.
Yeah, I agree. And just to end on a fun note, one of the cool headlines that I saw this week that I wanted to include in today's show was we have the star cast of the hit OG movie Napoleon and Dynamite end up getting into sports ownership, and they bought a stake in a team called the Richmond Flying Mummies. Tell me more about this.
Yeah, so it's a minor league baseball team that's debuting in the Northwoods League in May 2026. I think it's kind of just a fun move that they're making. One of the owners, one of the existing owners, John Grimes, he was also a cast member of Napoleon Dynamite.
Uncle Rico.
So you have a bunch of friends that are just coming together, buying a minor league baseball team. And I think because of their entertainment experience background, maybe they're trying to take this Savannah Bananas approach where it's
I completely agree.
Let's just have fun with this. Let's turn this into an entertainment experience. We kind of have, some showmanship here because they were all cast members of an epic movie. I'm going to be honest, though, never actually watched it.
That's crazy.
I definitely need to watch it now. But obviously a hit movie that people love and adore, and I think that they have some level of showmanship. They understand entertainment. They have a team around them, actually, where one of them was an owner of, I think he's known as mayor of Uranus, known for quirky Midwestern tourism and fudge shops. And then Carl Merklin realtor and entertainment manager with Southern California roots. So another entertainment alignment. So I think that it's not just another minor league baseball team that like a Diamond Baseball Holdings would buy. It's like, hey, let's like turn this into an entertainment experience.
Okay, so most people are probably looking at this as like, wow, this sounds like cool and fun. But I think there actually is a model here that can be applied. So think about our favorite movies as kids that we watched that revolved around sports. And imagine if that cast came together, if they were still together and they were still friendly with each other and they still had the capital, of course, and they had the right partners around them, and they came in to buy some of these assets that are growing and emerging and maybe not the big four and kind of the marquee assets in sports. But I think there's an entertainment play that you kind of engage the fans.
You document it or build content around it?
If I was in a position to do this, why wouldn't I get the OG Sandlot crew together? All those guys that played baseball together, why don't they come in and do this for another team? Like, I think that would bring a lot of appeal to the minor league team. There's a bunch of like media and content opportunities you can do around that. Think about Coach Carter. I'm just trying to think of like all my favorite movies that were like sports related. Like,
right.
Can you get them or one of the stars of that and build something around them? Some kind of like quasi Ryan Reynolds like Wrexham model, and increase valuation. I think there's some kind of interesting creative play there, but that might be a story for another time.
No, 100%. I feel like they're just doing it for the love of the game.
Which
makes it awesome. That's what sports is all about, right? Like, obviously there's a lot of money to be made, but I think it's just cool things like this, where you got a bunch of buddies from a cast of a great movie coming together and say, hey, let's have fun with this minor league baseball team.
Hopefully us soon, right?
Yeah, that would be sick.
Thanks for watching the fourth quarter.
We're signing out.